Just so nobody gets the mistaken impression that I actually know what I'm doing when it comes to gardening, I think it's important to share successes along with failure, the good along with the bad. So today I'm going to talk about something that is afflicting my pepper plants that I've had under my grow lights now since late January. So over the last couple of weeks, I started to notice some of my pepper plants here, like this Serrano, this Cayenne, and this Real Deal, that leaves were wilting. A lot of leaves were actually falling off, and there, on many of the leaves, there was these white crystalline deposits that were beginning to form. I'm trying to get it to pick up here with my inadequate iPhone camera. So naturally, I started to, well, I wouldn't say panic. I mean, it's not like a real emergency, but it was an unpleasant feeling because plant ailments are a lot like human ailments. You know how if you start to get a sore throat and a nose tickle, feeling kind of crappy, probably just a cold, could be Ebola. So I was a little concerned that I was going to lose all of these pepper plants and not get that time back and not have a chance to start more. So what I started to do is research, and I found that thankfully this is what is called plant edema. I say thankfully not because it's good or it's good for the plants, but because it is not a contagious fungal, viral, or bacterial disease of plants. So what is happening here is these plants have not been able to aspire moisture as fast as they take it in, and it causes stress on the plant cell walls. Leaves will start to droop, wilt, and ultimately fall off. We'll get into the causes of that, why this happened in a moment. So that's the good news. Most of these have actually started to make a recovery. Like this guy here was in pretty bad shape. You can still see the effects of the edema on the leaves, but new growth has been less affected. Same thing with this Cayenne. This entire stem up to the very top was almost leafless, but new branches and leaves started to sprout from the nodes along the stem here. So that's the good news, is that it was not a contagious ailment, and it didn't, kill all of my peppers. However, I'm not sure what the stress that this plant edema, put upon the plant is going to, whether or not that's going to have an effect when it comes to production later in the season. I won't know until, June, July, August, when these start fruiting. So what happened? How did this occur? So here is where the problem's coming from. As you can see here, my pepper plants got tremendously big in a hurry. Honestly, I'm baffled. I've never had peppers grow this fast before. These are 8 weeks old at the oldest. Some of them are as young as 6 weeks. And in years past, peppers have just crawled for me in terms of growth rate. So I'm not sure what happened this year, if it's the fact that I upped my grow light gain quite a bit. If the extra light made them grow faster, I'm not sure. But anyway, they shot up, and as they grew, of course, they started to crowd themselves out. That created some issues with humidity. Obviously, this thick canopy of pepper leaves here created some localized humidity effects. Also, the bigger a plant gets, the more it drinks, so it's easy to let them dry out by accident. And then you water, and then the plant takes in that water faster than it can aspirate moisture back out. So that is what where my problem stemmed from. So I'll know next year to start my peppers a lot later, so they don't get this huge before I can actually put them outdoors. I do have the fan running here, and that is alleviating some of the humidity issues. And most of the plants that have been affected by this are starting to recover. So that's good news. Unfortunately, these Cherokee purple tomato starts here were not as lucky. They were hit really hard with the edema. Interestingly, these were the only tomato variety I had to be significantly affected by it. I'm not sure why, but in researching the issue, I found it's common that different varieties will be affected more or less severely than others, and Cherokee purples just seem to be particularly susceptible to this. For my peppers, my bell peppers were almost completely unaffected, while my serranos were hit pretty hard. So it seems like a toss-up of which ones will and will not be hit by it. I called these pretty much a complete loss, which was that kind of sucked to scrap these, but everything is growing so fast under my grow lights that I have plenty of time, a little more than a month to start a new batch. Here I'm just trying to show what the stem of a tomato will look like as it's affected by edema, just to help others, who might be trying to diagnose a problem with their new tomato starts this year. Not too happy about this. It kind of sucks, but hey, at least it's not blight. Thankfully, with the exception of the aforementioned Cherokee purples that I scrapped, most of my tomatoes are doing great here. These have been able to live largely outside and also in our garage at night. Now that we're mostly having days in the 60s in this really bright sunny spot here. This is reaching the mid 70s during the sunniest parts of the day. So these are really starting to enjoy some good real sunshine and starting to perk up. I did have to have them almost exclusively in the garage under my crappiest grow light for a few days when the most recent round of rain ran through. I didn't really want these to get soaked and saturated this early in the game. That's just asking for them to rot away. So they started to look a little anemic, but they're, now that I have them back outdoors, they're doing much better. So I'm pretty happy with the way this is going, but I don't want to jinx it. And to use the very outdated expression, count my chickens before they hatch, so to speak. I'm pretty psyched. So every year when I plant my tomatoes, when I seed them, I put 2 or 3 in each cup. That's to accommodate, duds, so to speak, that, seeds that just don't germinate. But in the cups where I do have 2 or more germinate, what I do is I clip one of them, and I don't discard it, but I put it in a jar of water and let it root, and then just plant the stem. That's what one of these are. Usually I lose, a good number of those. It's a pretty traumatic experience for the plant, and maybe quarter, maybe half just die. I expect that. But this year, I think everyone that I've done that to has lived. So I'm going to have a surplus of tomato starts to give away, which is always kind of cool. This might be the last year I give away tomato starts. I've been toying for the last few years with the idea of selling some plant starts, but I think every gardener at some point gets that idea in their head, and there's a lot more involved to it. So I'm undecided there, but this year I'm probably going to make some local gardeners pretty psyched that they can get some free tomato plants. So in the garden proper, I don't really have all that much left growing. These are my potatoes, still going. This is the second round. The first round was kind of I hate to say failure, because we did get to eat some of them, but it wasn't what I hoped it had been. The ones I planted in October were largely killed by frost, and I mostly just got boilers out of it. So I'm hoping to get these through to at least the beginning of June, to get a nice good-sized potato harvest. Hopefully the heat doesn't start earlier than usual and brown everything up first. But even if I can get these through end of April, they're an early season potato, so I should be able to get a good crop out of it. Most of what I've been busy doing is prepping the beds. It's looking like I might be able to get some tomatoes in the ground late next week. We're supposed to have temperatures, sunny days, temperatures in the upper 70s, possibly low 80s, but lately the forecast has been changing minute to minute, so I'm not getting my hopes up too much. But I've been doing 2 things. In the beds where I had a cover crop growing like this one, and as unsightly as this looks, it's for a purpose. I chopped down the cover crop I had going, and I have cardboard over it to block sunlight. I'm just trying to terminate the cover crop so it won't get in the way when I transplant tomatoes into it. In the beds where I did have some winter crops going, I just piled on some of my homemade compost, and then I am mulching this year with largely, I've been doing okay on grass and weed clippings. This is the only time of year where free biomass in the form of grass, various weeds like all of these many Bermuda buttercups that we have growing around here. It's the only time that these grow. So I've been taking advantage of that as I do some lawn cleanup, just to pile these on top of my beds as a free mulch that I can more or less guarantee hasn't been treated with herbicides. The idea of persistent herbicide contamination in garden products is a huge concern of mine. It can render your garden basically a dead zone for a year and a half or better. So I'm trying to avoid purchasing anything, A, for the financial reasons, and B, I just don't want to be inadvertently bringing contaminated mulch into my gardens. I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep these here. This was the Brussels sprouts, red cabbage. There's a little shard in the back. Can get maybe another little harvest out of this, but these in this spot, I'll have to write this down in some kind of gardening journal. It just did not get enough light over the winter, and things stunted. So we've been able to harvest some a couple dinners worth of tiny Brussels sprouts, which when they're tiny is honestly when they taste the best. But I'm going to really need this bed by April 1st at the latest, so I don't know that I'm going to wait it out and see if these produce any more. These may just largely become chicken feed. But live and learn. Next year I know not to really bother with anything besides maybe some greens, some lettuce in this bed, which I've thrown lettuce in some shady spots over the winter, and it stays small and tender, but again, sometimes smaller tender greens is better than the big stringy fibrous ones. These carrots are still doing great. They're still living. I'm gonna leave these. I don't need this bed until May. This bed and this other bed of potatoes behind it are going to be my sweet potato beds this spring and summer, and I don't put those sweet potatoes out until early, maybe mid-May, just because they really like hot conditions, and we can still get some pretty cold nights in April. So I'm letting these ride until right before. So I'm curious, let's see how these are doing. I pull one every couple of weeks just to get a check on some of the size. All right, we're getting there. I mean, it's not huge, but how huge of a carrot do you need? Sometimes a small tender vegetable is better than one that, it's like packing up a block of wood on the countertop trying to cook it down to something edible. So this is encouraging. Carrots have been tricky for me. They've always been a hit or miss crop. Some years I get really decent ones. Other years it's like the roots never bulk up, and it's just baby carrots. So this is a good sign. And it looks like hopefully we'll have a bunch to freeze and put away. Can't really grow these here over the summer. They just bolt immediately if you can even get them to germinate in the heat. So having some homemade carrots available in the freezer, not homemade, but homegrown carrots available in the freezer is always a nice thing. So that's really it. Not a ton going on right now. It's just between seasons, really. I'm chomping at the bit to get tomatoes in the ground, really get the summer garden underway after what's felt like just 2, maybe 3 months of cold, gray, and wet. Can't wait for some decent weather. We have like a 40-second shoulder season between the end of the cold, gray, and wet and the start of the mega heat, so I'm looking forward to that. My next video is probably going to be the second part of my, for lack of a better term, method of planting tomatoes. I assure you, it usually works, as disjointed as it can be sometimes. So, hate to say it, but liking and subscribing actually really does help the mysterious YouTube algorithm notice my channel. So if you can think to do that, that'd be great. And then until next time.